I think when you can analyze yourself and find your strengths and your weaknesses, it should help you better identify candidates that have the strengths that are your weaknesses so that you can offset yourself.
I love bookkeeping.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for listening to the I Love Bookkeeping podcast. My name is Hannah Robinson.
And I'm Melissa Honan.
And thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode out every Tuesday and Thursday. We're just going to keep going into our series, expanding on different topics that were talked about at BKX this year. And today we're going to be talking about our keynote speaker's speech, Sally Hogshead. She was, I think it's Hogshead. Is it Hogshead or Hogshead?
Hogshead. She told a funny anecdote about it.
She did.
That's why.
And I remember the story, but I couldn't remember if it was Hogshead or Hogshead. Anywho, so sorry about that. Sally Hogshead. And she actually had everyone take this personality assessment before the conference so that she could go over the results and what the different archetypes of personality mean. But I think one of the overreaching things that she wanted to in pieces of knowledge she wanted to give to the audience is that different personalities carry different strengths, and everybody has their strengths and how to really utilize them. And that's really, I took so much from that keynote speech. Melissa, I know you probably did too, but I absolutely loved her.
So, okay. So it's funny.
Oh boy.
It's funny because I had a couple people come up to me after because they had remembered one of our podcast episodes from the beginning where I literally just talked shit about personality assessments. And I was like, oh my God.
You did talk shit.
Yes. And so it was so funny. Thank you guys for listening and actually remembering what we say. That was hilarious. And okay, so the keynote speech. I absolutely loved Sally. That was such a great talk. You could tell she's definitely a professional speaker. I was entertained. I did not zone out once during her speech, which I tend to do very easily because I have ADHD. So it was fantastic. Okay. I think that the idea behind her personality archetypes, it's great. Sounds wonderful. I think it's complete bullshit. And yes,
I loved it.
I think it's total bullshit. I think that almost every personality assessment is bullshit. There is one, I think the big five, that is actually been proven in studies to help identify personality types and actually be used effectively for by psychologists. Other than that, there are no studies that show that any of this stuff means anything. I think that it's a really great way for people to pat themselves in the back, to give themselves a cool name, to help connect and identify with other people. I'm not saying that that's not a good part of it. I think ultimately it's bullshit. It could put people in a corner that they don't necessarily want to be in, or they feel limited by, okay, well, I'm this personality, so I can't do this. I'm personally not a fan. But overall, loved Sally. I think that there's some great things that are a part of it, but I don't think that you should live or die by your personality assessment.
So I agree with that. I don't think anybody should live or die by their personality assessment and run too far with it. What I gain from things like these, and this was actually, I will say, this is a personality assessment that I feel like I really learned more about myself. And maybe I'm on the younger end of the audience, and maybe that's why I don't know. That's might be irrelevant, but I feel like I learn about strengths that I knew I had, but I needed kind of the little kick to be like, yeah, you're good at this.
Like the validation.
According to this assessment. Yeah, it's like the validation of your strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's what I really gained from it, is that validation and figuring out what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. And yeah, I think it's like a warm and fuzzy to be called something cool. Like I was the intrigue, and I'm like, oh,
You would be.
Of course I'm intriguing. Of course I'm intriguing.
Okay. Well, I was the maestro. So like my ego didn't need that. You know, like,
but did it?
but did it? It didn't. It didn't.
It did.
And so I think that's the thing. I think that there are a lot of positive things that can come out of personality assessments. Like I said, like that camaraderie with other people that are similar to you. There is that warm and fuzzy of like getting a cool name or like it's telling you what your positives are. I think it could be really great. But is it actually a good tool to use in your business? No, I would not have my team take this personality assessment and use it for anything. I would stick to something like the Big Five.
So I kind of agree with that because I think personality assessments are great for personal use. I don't see how they really help with team, like team building or in a team environment, because it's like, what does it do besides just tell you like who's going to clash and who's not? Like, you know what I mean? I feel like it just exacerbates maybe differences that people already were dwelling on. Maybe, I don't know. I kind of don't see the benefit. I'm not sure if we've ever done an assessment at bookkeepers.com.
You guys should. I think you should do the Big Five. I will say.
With that being said, you should totally do that.
You should. Well, so no, I do think because I say this with a caveat that again, don't live and die by it. Don't use it to make your hiring decisions. I don't use them in our hiring process anymore for this reason because
it's like zodiacs.
Yes. And so my thing is that from a management perspective, that knowing somebody's personality will help you determine how to have conversations with them and how to phrase conversations with somebody so that it's effective. And it's very hard to learn that unless you're around somebody all the time and you get to know them really well and you get to know if you have a new hire, if you're working remotely, it's going to be harder to learn that naturally. So using, I think, the Big Five, because again, it's actually proven to work. It helps you learn quickly how you need to have conversations so that they can be effective to manage people. But I would never use a personality assessment to say, okay, well, I need somebody that's an 8, or whichever one that one is. I don't know, the 1 through 10. They were like, oh, you're a 7. Like, you're a 7. I was like, okay, anybody that ever talks like that to me, like you immediately just lost 10 coolness points from me. Sorry, Brooke and Ben, because that's exactly who I was having the conversation with. I don't know if I'm a 7. I don't want to know. I don't want to have those conversations. I can't say like, oh, I need a 7 for this position. If you're not a 7, I can't hire you. Like that will never be a thing that happens in my company. But I do think that knowing, okay, this person responds to positive reinforcement, not negative reinforcement, then that's going to help me set goals and expectations for that client, for that employee. But if you have somebody on my team, which I do, that responds to negative reinforcement and not positive reinforcement, and you're normally not somebody that can just give negative reinforcement, then it's going to challenge you as a manager on how best to manage that person and how to have different conversations with them to figure out what's going to motivate them. And you're not going to know that if you're working remotely, unless they're very in tune with themselves and they can tell you, or you do have some type of personality assessment so that you can at least start to have that conversation.
Today's show is brought to you by Keeper, the one app to run your bookkeeping business. Keeper helps you get faster client responses with your own custom branded QuickBooks integrated client portal. Finally, you can say goodbye to those pesky spreadsheets full of uncategorized transactions. Keeper also helps you catch those embarrassing coding errors before your clients do. And with Keeper, you can generate beautiful custom reports that your clients will absolutely love to read. To find out more, go to keeper.app. That's keeper.app. Mention I Love Bookkeeping to get 20% off your first 3 months. Again, go to keeper.app to find out more. Thank you for listening.
I think when you learn more about things that are relevant to when it comes to a work environment, I think that's when you really gain a lot of perspective on your employees or your coworkers and how they respond to different events and different ways of communication. I know that, like, because when I think of personality assessments and kind of that line of judgment that it can create, for me, I think of zodiacs. Like because I love astrology. I'm a nerd. You're a Leo and I'm a Scorpio and I'm all into the astrology. And sometimes if I know someone's sign beforehand and I'm like, oh, you're acting that way because you're a Scorpio or, something like that. And I kind of feel like it's maybe similar for those assessments is that you can I feel like, yeah, what you said is it can put people in a box where you pick and choose the different traits that you see because you're already seeking them out. Does that make sense?
Yes, I have a perfect example of this.
Go for it.
Because we're currently hiring a salesperson and I think I know who we're going to hire. And I'm excited about this role to get myself out of sales. And we originally interviewed this person like over a year ago for a different position, but it wasn't the right fit at the time for that other position for them or for us. But at the time, we were still doing the personality assessments. And so when we re-interviewed them this year, Daniel had asked me, hey, did you have them take a personality assessment? And I was like, no, we don't do that anymore in the hiring process. And I said, oh, but we interviewed them last year when we were, let me go take a look at it. And so I had already had this person pegged. I think they would be a great salesperson based on our conversation. We're going to have a few other interviews. It was all planned out, scheduled a second interview with Daniel. He took a look at the personality assessment and said, this personality assessment is completely incompatible with a sales role.
Interesting.
Guess who we're hiring for the sales role, guys?
The one who is
the one that's completely incompatible with the sales role based on the personality assessment. Because in reality, talking to this person, would they naturally maybe not be what you would assume a salesperson should be? But again, that's why I talk so enthusiastically about how introverts can do sales. I'm an introvert. I do sales. You don't have to be an aggressive, pushy used car salesman. Because again, there are people with different personalities that can thrive in different roles for different reasons, even though it's not what fits inside the box. Like talking about, being outside the box again. I really think that if anything, personality assessments should start a conversation. So I guess maybe if you do like, this, Sally's personality assessment and you want to have your team take it, I think it could be like a great, like kind of bonding experience where you guys can all talk about your cool names and that kind of thing. And it starts a conversation around like, oh, hey, Amanda, you're the intrigue. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like it's accurate? Like, I think it's a good place to like start having conversations, but I would not let it influence your decision making.
I agree. I think it should be kept light.
Yeah.
Kind of like astrology.
Yeah.
Except sometimes I don't keep it light and I'm like, I will never date another Gemini. Yeah, no, I agree too. Yeah, I see what you mean. And I think a lot of people will agree with your view on personality assessments. Something that I did take away a lot from her speech is just utilizing your differences. And I feel like that is such an important takeaway that kind of I guess when you kind of mix a personal assessment with certain takeaways, the takeaways can get kind of lost in the assessment because you're busy analyzing yourself. And I totally was. But I was also paying attention. And I feel like a big takeaway that I got from Sally is to utilize your differences within the workspace instead of kind of, I guess, fighting your differences and recognizing what you're great at, recognizing what other people are great at, and being able to make the most of that instead of trying to get someone to conform to something that's not their strength.
I think that's a great takeaway. And I think part of that is, I think, again, positive of the personality assessment is, like you said, you were analyzing yourself, right? And I think anything that makes you sit down for 5 minutes and analyze yourself the positives and the negatives when it comes to business. I think that is so important because it is our natural tendency to be attracted to people that are similar to us in our personal lives and also our work lives. And so that's why you tend to see like people in, particular work culture, like liking the same things. Like maybe they're all outdoorsy. They all have dogs, like, because we're just humans, right? And you're in an interview and you're like, oh my God, I like hiking and I like dogs. Like it's going to sway you towards that candidate, right? It's really hard to be objective when it comes to those things. But I think when you can analyze yourself and find your strengths and your weaknesses, it should help you better identify candidates that have the strengths that are your weaknesses so that you can offset yourself and try to hire people that are different than you, that are going to fill in for the things that you can't do. So I think it's an important conversation to start and like just look inward. What do I do well? What do I not do well? How can I find somebody that does this well? Because I obviously am not going to change.
That's a really good point. And I think I think there can be times where companies can kind of try to mold someone into a box that they don't fit into. And I think we've all kind of been there where someone has given us a task or a part of our role has been something that we're really uncomfortable with. And we either have to adapt and overcome, which is what we spoke about in our last episode, or kind of speak on your differences and voice your concern that this is not, maybe this would fit somewhere else. And I think not every company that you work for, you can voice that type of concern. Luckily, I think the company that I work for, bookkeepers.com, does kind of give us the freedom to say, this isn't working for me, or I need help, or I need extra help. And I think that's something that is the sign of such a great workplace, is if your employees are comfortable voicing their concerns and and kind of being able to celebrate differences. Is at the end of the day, I think that's the most important thing that I took away from that speech is, not everyone has the same strengths. Not everybody can do the same task at the same level, but what someone can't do, somebody can, and maybe vice versa. And so I think kind of maybe not staying in your lane or being boxed in. I don't agree with that, but I think knowing your strengths and working on your strengths to become even stronger is something that's really great to learn. And that's kind of why I enjoyed Sally's personality assessment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Again, it's just like having that conversation that can open the door to thinking about yourself. But when it comes to 36, I think that's the thing, is like putting everybody into 36 boxes. Just something about that. I don't think I'll never subscribe to that,
Yeah.
But no, just to give a negative Nancy sorry to anybody named Nancy on this podcast, but that's just me. But also, I just thought it was funny that people came up to me after that speech and they were like, oh my God, I remember your podcast where you did. And I was like, ooh, I like Sally. Don't say anything. And I do. And I loved her speech so much. I thought she was a fantastic keynote speaker.
She was incredible. I loved her.
Just like because then I was speaking, the next day, and I was like, man, like just the ability to public speak, just like you could tell she's a professional, and I was just so in awe at her abilities, and was like, ooh, maybe I can be her when I grow up. But then I was like, nah, I'm tired.
No, that was my first BKX, and we'll speak on this more. BKX was my first time ever on stage, and I actually think we talked about this in like the highs and lows episode of BKX, but oh my God, was I nervous? Like even though like I know half these people, it was a great experience. I would definitely do it again, but I was a little nervous to go on stage. But I think you did an okay job. I was a little bit fumbly.
You were fantastic.
I did okay.
Every outfit you wore was fantastic. I was like so excited to see your outfit every day. Thank you. If I had to get up on stage and like sing, like I don't do karaoke,
no.
I would just die. But like public speaking, for some reason, I think I don't get nervous doing it. The only reason I was nervous is because Daniel kept telling me that I needed to be.
Oh my God.
He's like, you're not nervous. Well, you should be. I was like, oh,
Jesus.
should I be? And then I got up
Should
there and
I?
was like, nah, I'm good.
I got up there and I was like, let me tell everybody about the time I shit my pants.
Yeah, I know, right? We'll
That's
talk
a good
about
way to
that.
just break the ice.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in another episode.
Yeah, as we will always bring this up as often as we possibly can. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, or you just want to talk to us, we know you do. Please shoot us an email at hello@ilovebookkeeping.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe. We have a new episode out every Tuesday and Thursday. My name is Hannah Robinson.
And I'm Melissa Honan.
And thank you so much for listening to the I Love Bookkeeping podcast.
I love bookkeeping. Here's a little shout to all my friends working hard at keeping the books. You want to change your life, you want to grow that biz, it's not as hard as it looks. Being money